Okay, so unfortunately, our time is coming to an end, so we need to do some wrap up. Actually, there's more than, well, we'll see how long this takes. But so how can we collaborate? And this is kind of going from monolithic systems to modular interworking systems. So how do we do it given the wide disparity of stuff? And the idea I had is that we actually need to start looking at our own systems and seeing how we can break apart the pieces. But to be honest with you, so one of the things that I think Fuego does that is interesting and useful, well, I think we have a couple of things that we have the way we do our parsing of results is, I think, useful, but it's all kind of built in. And so one of the things I think we need to do as a project is look at how we can, well, I'm not sure how to do it. It's in our GitHub repository in a subdirectory. And so do you want to have to check out our Git repository and go extract out just these little bits, or should it be broken out to its own GitHub? Or that will make a whole bunch of extra overhead.
Yeah, Tim, I think I have tried Fuego. I have tried kernel CI. I'm going to try LabGrind. I tried Lava. I think that this is something what everybody should do. It means just to try others, just to educate a little bit. Everybody should just try others, just to have an impression how this is going to work. And I think this will improve the communication a lot, because you simply know what you can expect, and it can be a simple example, right? You don't need to test everything. It's really just about hello world, but you get an impression what exactly they are using, and these different projects are using. And I think that this is definitely something what we should focus on the first. I mean, just to have an easy way. You have a Docker container, right? Kernel CI, you can just try that. Lava is also with some examples. That Lava inbox, what Kevin has done last year. It means this is something what can be easily run in very limited amount of time, and you can get a very good example or impression how exactly this is working. And I think that this is something what we should try to put together, that every project should just put together some sort of easygoing README or container, whatever, just how to replicate it, just to educate self how exactly this is going to be, right? And we have some popular board like BeagleBone, what can be the target, right? It means this is really something what is very useful just to have information what we are talking about. That's, I think, that the first very reasonable steps to do.
So, is it worthwhile to have everyone come up with a document saying, here's a hello world test on a BeagleBone, and how that's accomplished with your system? Okay, I'll write that down. So what about this notion of the monolithic? So how do you go from monolithic to modular?
PD daemon.
PD daemon. We'll just, that's right. I'll take the parser and I'll just contribute it to PDU daemon. No, so I mean,
you mentioned about splitting it that separate Git repository, but that can be really useful because that then does focus your mind into actually building some APIs around it.
It causes you to think about, well, if you have to like git clone it yourself and use it as if it were an external service, right? Then it starts you thinking about, well, how are other people going to use it? One of the things that we've been doing, like Fuego started very, very intertwined with Jenkins, and we've been really working a lot over the last maybe 2 years to decouple Jenkins and Fuego, so that now you can do most operations except for the visualization. You can do most operations on the command line, and I think that that's one thing that is important to try to do, to make sure that you're not intertwined with other systems so tightly that you can't run it standalone. And maybe other APIs. I mean, for us, I look at the command line as kind of the least common denominator. If you have a CLI tool, then that means that you're accessible to to other people. It depends on what your CLI tool has dependencies on, of course. And like our CLI tool used to be dependent on the Jenkins Python module, which of course was.
Yeah, so just to comment on that, we got the same sort of thing with our tests. So the tests were tightly coupled with Lava, and then we took an effort. It took almost a year to decouple all the tests from Lava so we can run them standalone.
Okay.
It's
So anyway, I think that's the type of thing. Well, so, you know, I don't want to say that that is the solution. That's what we have been working on is focused on moving to CLI, decoupling ourselves from decoupling some of the pieces. And we still, I mean, our end users still use Jenkins and our CLI. And it's under the hood when they're using the front end stuff. But that's the only thing I can think of. And then there's the GitHub thing separating out into different repositories.
Well, I think this diagram was also done with the intention of at least making us start think of these as at least all the large colored blocks should be conceptually separate software projects with different interfaces. If they're all together in one big blob, then they're not going to be reusable by each other. Right?
Right. So are there any other, yeah, go ahead, microphone.
I have a couple questions and comments, I guess, because I'm not sure if you have a next slide or what your next slide is, but I really want to talk about how to communicate so that when we all leave this room, we have some way of carrying this conversation into tomorrow and next week.
I think I have something on this.
Okay. So we can hold it if we were going to get there. I just wanted to make sure we're going to talk about it. Also, having this event more so that it's not a one-time thing, it's a continuous thing, and how we can do that. And also, I'm hoping that we can agree on a place to have beer tonight.
Well, I don't have the bullet for that.
A pub.
Yes. Which one?
So yeah, I do think we should get to that. Let me back up and look at the slides I skipped over just real quick to see make sure we don't wrap up the modular thing. Okay, setting standards. Where can we standardize? Okay, so what?
Let's try PDB. Let's just improve ourselves on that.
Well, no. So okay. So seriously, a document repository. If we produce like a guide for something or a recommendation list, where do we put that stuff? Linux Wiki. Okay, there you go. Done.
That's always your answer, isn't it?
Well, no. I heard it from the audience.
Well, the thing I wonder is, do we have an organization here? I mean, is this a group of people that we should have some body around or not?
That's what I wanted to
We have a
ask.
mailing list, but it's not it's not that active.
No, it's not that active, and it's not. There's a lack of formality, right? There's not like an association or a. Yeah, or maybe that's good. Maybe this
Yeah,
is
that's
open
why all these
source,
things
right?
are awkward, because it's like, should we put it in this guy's project or this guy's project or this
Well,
guy's
right,
project?
and I'm not. Despite that my slides are all labeled Fuego, this is not like a Fuego world domination ploy, right? I'm not. That's actually not my goal, right? But I want to use other people's software, and I want to contribute my own software and reduce the amount of fragmentation here. And so, to some degree, you have to check your ego a little bit and say, okay, it's okay if that other person takes on this thing. That used to be part of your thing. But in terms of, so I would say kernel CI project for a lot of this stuff, but I don't know is
Well, for some things, yes, but I was going to say that an area for standardizing, it seems like one area that's a little more advanced is in Fuego and LKFT are more advanced than actually results collection, parsing, pass-fail criteria. So that seems to be like an obvious place where those two projects, at least among this crowd, seem to be farther along than, and that's something kernel CI doesn't do. We're just going to consume that, but.
but I mean,
but for collaborating,
other than sending each other emails on automated testing, I mean, what?
Well, it starts there. I mean,
It
emails.
starts there.
Well, it
that
starts
gets,
here, but it follows up on email.
Yeah.
And maybe we keep
Well, so let me-
continuing to do this.
Do we have enough?
Let me talk a little bit about this. I think so nobody wants to commoditize their own layer, right? We're all kind of invested in our own software that we've written. And one of the difficulties is people will still need to perform their own testing. All of us are doing our own testing exercises with our frameworks. And in the process of modularization, as we break stuff apart, we still need all the other pieces of our monolithic system to continue that testing activity. So that's a wrinkle. The other thing, like this last bullet, it's hard to maintain software you're not using, right? So it's really hard. I get tests in Fuego that I have no capability of running at all, and I can do visual inspections on them, but I have to rely on the person who contributed the test to be the ultimate maintainer. And so when we submit a PDU driver to PDU daemon, right? How's he going to know if it works or not? Or he can't really. Well, the only way, right, is once this starts to take off, he can rely on essentially what's the beta testing, the industry testing of some piece of software.
I mean, that's something everybody who's a kernel maintainer is already familiar with. And it's like a certain point you just have to go, I don't have this hardware. I don't care if it works. I care. I mean, it's the people who have the hardware can run that test who have to care if it works. I mean, there's a limited. I mean, it's just an unsolvable problem. If people don't have the ability to run the stuff and they don't have a centralized lab somewhere that will run it for them, then I mean, we know what the answer to that question is, and it's been working fine for the kernel.
Okay.
We can probably adopt the same approach, and it'll probably be fine.
Okay.
I agree.
So so did we settle this? Did we decide on eLinux for the short term? Okay.
Well, and the current mailing list, I think.
And automated testing? No new mailing list needed?
Well, unless somebody thinks there's a need. I didn't hear one, but.
The one piece of this that I'm wondering about is whether this group needs to be able to speak with some sort of voice and authority. So,
Right.
to go to, say, an upstream project and say, can you produce sort of tests following some of these guidelines or something like that? So that's the one thing that I'm wondering. Is there a way in which this group can actually speak with some sort of authoritative voice and say, this is a document, that Sony or some other company is
I don't know.
standing
So
behind?
in my view, right, so there are no, so we're all here, I believe, mostly as individuals. I don't think anyone's here, representing their company, right? So I'm not here, I can't say, well, Sony endorses all this. And so,
Do we need to decide now?
well, no, we don't need to decide, but I think it's a good question. And in my opinion, I'm going to deflect over to Kevin. Once there's a kernel CI project, I think that a Linux Foundation project has a little bit more cachet to say, well, this is, if I were to publish a guideline document, I would much rather put, that on the header of the document than, Tim said this, or a group of people and
that's basically what I was going to say was, I think a Linux Foundation project is what makes sense. And it feels like kernel CI is probably not a bad choice.
Yeah.
I'm just worried that the name of it, the kernel CI, is probably going to limit that. And if this, Yocto project is happy to help there somehow, I don't know how we do that, but certainly, again, it's another LF project. I'm happy to,
The name is potentially unfortunate, but at the same time, all the stuff that we're doing for kernel CI is not specific to the kernel.
I get that.
And so we do want to be able to define things in a way and have an influence that other people are gonna follow. But yeah, I agree. The naming is hard.
I mean, we could also publish the document separately and then say kernel CI and Yocto and whoever else.
Well, if we're both backing it, then
endorse endorse this document.
It might not be company endorsement; it might be project endorsement.
or a project endorsement.
Yeah, that's fine too. Obviously, I can't speak for the LF kernel CI project yet because that project will have members in a governing board that will make its decisions. But I will be involved with that process, and I will be hopefully influencing as well. And maybe some of you if you join the project.
And if we're doing that, like you're saying, where these projects are endorsing this, then you could have AGL doing it and SIP doing it and so on, right? And then it starts really becoming something.
Right.
So SIP and LTSI, for example, are going to be like associate members of the kernel CI project as well, showing support. But this is just like LF cross-pollination stuff.
Right. Okay. So-
Could the design for testing guidelines be such a first document? There's probably a lot of agreement on that.
Okay. So is there, okay, so next event. It's not that hard to put together something that's co-located with another event. And the hard thing about this was that we managed it completely separately from the rest of the stuff. And if we did an open event, that's much easier. And then we chose this limited format, and we took some flack for it. There were people who wanted to be here and couldn't. And but there are pros and cons to an open event, right? So what do people think about going forward? I mean, when would we want to meet again? And what kind of travel budgets do you have? And what needs to happen to? There are lots of options. The easiest thing for me, quite frankly, if enough people can do it, is to set up a micro conference at Plumbers, right? I can probably swing that pretty easily. There is not this Plumbers, yeah, not this Plumbers. In the future, like next year's Plumbers, but so that's low cost to me, right? We had to get sponsors for this one to rent this room and pay for lunch and stuff, and that all of that is like a lot of kind of painful overhead. Whereas if you do something with Plumbers, you kind of just have to be the program committee essentially for the track.
So, I mean, for me personally, I tend to go to ELC and ELCE and not Plumbers or Scale or so on.
Okay.
I don't know if most likely if this turned into a micro conference, that would probably change.
Okay.
So
Yep.
it's optional.
My experience is Plumbers works great for kernel people who are likely to be there. It's painful for a wider audience, getting people to register before it sells out.
Oh,
things
yeah,
like
that it's sold out, almost immediately this time.
That's been a big problem for me every time I've run the audio thing at Plumbers.
Okay.
So, by the way, if you want help with running that, let me know. I do have some experience with the audio thing.
Okay. Well, so to get,
I was going to just add that Plumbers is a good spot for really kernel-focused testing, and that's what there's a testing and fuzzing microconference at the kernel at Plumbers.
oh, by the way, are you doing that?
Yeah, I will be attending, and I've been requested to summarize this event at that event.
Right.
I know Dimitri will be there as well at the microconference, and probably a few others. But I think that microconference is different than this, and I because of the heavily embedded focus of this crowd, maybe it makes more sense for ELC, but I also don't want this to only be an embedded crowd, right?
Right.
Although ELC tends to be co-located with OSS.
Yeah.
Right. For the foreseeable future, ELC and OSS will be together. So, which means it'll be these mega things where there are 2,000 people wandering around.
But what
I
about
don't know, next like August in San Diego, or
that's next
or well, what about? Does Lenaro Connect make sense or not?
No, it's too expensive.
Well, there's Lenaro Connect has a big sticker price. Also, the next one is in April in Bangkok, which might not be super convenient for travel for many people here. So, we could do something about the sticker price of the conference, but people tend to look at the website and see the sticker price and run screaming. So,
right.
The other thing is, though, is I think a lot of Linux conferences should have testing tracks and testing content. And so, like at Connect, at our last Lenaro Connect, we had a testing day, and we invited some testing people to come. In fact, we did it at the last two Connects, and we intend to continue doing that. So it doesn't make it a bad place, but I understand that it's not where you're going to get a group like this every time.
yeah.
Right.
And it's difficult for Intel, for example, to justify going there.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so
ELC,
there's ELC Europe. October next year.
ELC and ELCE are really close together next year too. So
They
I
are.
almost think we should just aim for ELCE again.
Okay.
And then we'll have some mini meetings in the middle at Plumbers and a couple other smaller things.
Okay.
But
And
then
stuff
the
on the
mailing
mailing
list.
list. Okay. ELCE for the next public-private.
Yeah, that was I was going to ask. What do people think about the public-private thing?
I think the testing track.
Have a testing track in ELCE with, should we have private meetings as well, or, I don't know. So, I mean, public stuff is terrible for interactive discussion. I mean, you can have BOFs, but I don't know.
And a testing track just means a bunch of talks, right?
It means a bunch of talks, and the committee
mean
is
what we just did.
at the mercy of whoever submits, right? So, and I mean, we could go out and recommend people to submit something like a PDU daemon next year or something. You didn't know you were signing up for an ELC talk, right?
It's already been accepted.
It's already been accepted. That's right. So, yeah, so I still don't know public-private. If we have a private meeting, then I do have to look at sponsorship. And it's not super expensive, but it's like $4 or $5 grand, and so.
We should definitely have a BOF. I mean,
Yeah, we could have a BOF, right? And then that's, so.
And the buff in the
What?
track could be public.
Yeah, the BOF and the track would be public, so.
The only
Maybe
problem
we
with
can-
BOFs
maybe-
is sometimes they end up colliding with other BOFs that some of
Right,
us have
right,
to go to.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, so does this. I mean, this collides with about 10 other
Oh,
things.
yes. Yeah, it does. Okay, so we can discuss more details on the list, but let's shoot for ELC Europe next year, and I'll see if I can get a track and a BOF, and we'll think about a private meeting if that seems appropriate.
And if you have opinions about what to do next that you don't want to share in this crowd, please send them to us as well.
Yeah.
What we should have done, what we should do next time, that type of thing.
Right.
I still have one question, what I started with, which is that one guy after that, he wants to share a test case with others, and we don't have a place, right? It means that's a functional test, and I would like to have any decision where we can share this together.
Well, okay, here's the thing. You're welcome to submit it to Fuego. But I didn't, so I don't want to make that, I don't want to make a land grab. I'll tell you, though, that honestly, so here's the problem with submitting it to Fuego. I've got 100 tests in my inbox right now, and I just have not been able to keep up with.
Why not just to simplify that? We said, okay, this is, we started with the elinux.org, right? It means just push it to wherever you want on the GitHub, whatever, and just put a link there.
So say that again. Let me.
We need to share test cases, functional test cases, and all the repos. It means we can use elinux.org.
Oh, you're just talking about the repos to the test
Yeah,
cases.
to the repos,
Oh, okay.
which contain
Yeah,
the test cases.
Yeah, we
right?
can do that. We can set up a page on eLinux and just say, here's
let's just
this
start
group of
from-
tests, here's this group of
Yeah,
tests.
and let's just
Okay.
start
But
from
why
that.
don't we just create an eLinux organization on GitHub, and then everybody can, or something
Well,
like that.
a test organization,
Yeah.
a test repository on
Yeah.
GitHub. Yeah.
Yeah, but the question is, it will be in different formats, right? It could be a subdir somewhere, right? It's I think just a central place where you have all that connection to different projects, which contains functional
You're
tests.
just talking
It will be
about a
wonderful.
list of links, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
And it means we don't have a central repo. People can push it to anywhere they want, and we should be there at least for the first place.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think until we have actually agreed on what that test definition is, I think it's better to collect them, at least so people can go and look at what everybody else has. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I know of the TI ones. Lava itself has a small collection of, and then LKFT has a collection of tests. And the
Yeah, so for me, right now, the bee in my bonnet is test definition. So I want to, essentially, we did a little bit of that with the test survey. We got kind of covered a lot of different territory, but I'd like to start gathering the detailed field lists for everybody's different test definitions so that we can kind of compare them across the board. And so that's kind of, I'm taking that as an action item, and I'll do that on eLinux Wiki. So you may get another survey, this time the survey may not be, fill out this 1 hour form, maybe more along the lines of just point me in your repository to where you have a test definition. Give me a sample one, and I'll go look at the fields. If you have doc, that's great, but but a lot of people don't have docs, and it's much easier just to look at your JSON file or your YAML file or whatever it is.
Can we also have a table of contents for eLinux wiki for all the stuff that was discussed here on automated testing? Because right now I'm trying to discover anything there and just doesn't work.
Well, it started with the board farm page, which was actually created last year as a result of VLC Europe. We can have
I would say just automated testing page, which
an
has
automated
links to
testing
everything
page on
else
eLinux.
that relates.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. I'll do a page, and then there's another page which is this list of repositories.
Did we decide to keep the mailing list we have? Because I would like to propose a new mailing list.
Propose away.
I think it would have more visibility if it was on Vigor, if we had a Linux testing mailing list that wasn't specific to, I don't know, we can call it automated testing, I guess, but generic Linux testing for the Linux kernel in a place that's discoverable.
Is there anything else?
There's there's nothing.
I thought there was a Linux testing on Vigor. What's K-self-test on?
Yeah, that's on Vigor, but
well,
right, that's
I know.
K-self-test.
It's not
And
the
there's
same.
some-
It's not the scope of this, but okay.
So I don't know if it's appropriate. I'm kind of new here, so but that would make more sense to me, and I think more people would stumble upon it than what we currently have, because what we currently have doesn't work, actually. I mean, nobody uses it, so I don't know why that is. If that's a causation or
Well, I think everyone's super busy, and there are no assignments.
Vigor isn't necessarily going to help people discover it. I don't know that people particularly browse the Vigor lists.
I think the downside of it, there are no archives, right?
People do archive the Vigor list. The other issue with Vigor is Dave is not thrilled with HTML email, and not everybody involved in testing has a mail setup that's conducive to that. So they might not be able to send mail to Vigor, for example, if they were to use the Linaro Gmail web client in their normal working life, which I know a bunch of people do.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm afraid we're going to walk away from here and lose most of the context until this time next year, and that would be a shame because we don't have we don't have anything really tying us together.
But is the host of the email list is that the root cause? I don't think that's the root cause. I think it's
I just want to know how to have a conversation.
I think we need to convince people to use the list more, and hopefully a bunch of these things will be. Tim, you will doubtless be posting every time you do anything. From the Lowlands factory you have.
As with everyone in the room, modulo my time, right? I mean, I've got 7 other sticks in the fire, so
as stuff gets done,
right.
It seems like the root cause is more that this is not the top priority of any of our day jobs, and so we're doing this kind of on free time, and so it just means that means the volume for these discussions is just low and the bandwidth is low. And maybe that changes with some projects being created and more emphasis on testing. I think the emphasis on testing is increasing. But
I don't know. A lot of us do this every day, and it would be nice to have more open conversations with each other once a year.
Yeah, actually, I think one thing I noticed with the survey and with some of the stuff you posted, maybe post it more directly to the list, like the actual content directly to the list.
What do you mean?
The survey was. I think the problem with it was it was too big to read. Maybe.
I asked everyone to send it back to me, but also copy the list.
Yeah.
So a bunch of them went to the list.
No, they did. But I think part of the problem there, like I say, was just
it was drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, but stuff like the terminology list that we went through might have.
One of the things that happens on the list is you get these big documents with 27 points, right? And then it's it's really hard to thread. More pinpointed discussions, I think, will be easier for people to answer. It's what do you think of this term? As opposed to, review these 30 terms.
Just making some noise, I think, would be useful for raising the visibility. I mean, even if it's not the most exciting and useful discussion
Well-
ever, just having people, like Dan says, it just looks a bit deserted right now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe now after today, we have a few ideas of some of the low-hanging fruit, which is the common results output format, and we can have some maybe some sooner rather than later discussions around that stuff, or at least when you're putting stuff on the wiki, also post to the list and say, look, this is how we're doing things. It's now on the wiki or something.
Yeah,
So
I guess that would be my request, is people just post your questions, post your thoughts, post your discoveries on the list.
Yeah, I've
Let's
actually
get-
thought-
like,
so-
let's talk.
Like I said at the beginning here, some of this stuff I've been thinking about for years, and I have a whole philosophical rant I can go off on something I call TGUIDs, which is test case global unique identifiers, and there's a whole philosophy around those and why they're important, so maybe instead of starting a blog, I should just be posting all my philosophical rants to the testing list and let people rain on them.
Your presentation, the first from the testing track, right?
What? So I actually have TGUIDs in here. If we,
Yeah, I skipped
So what-
that slide.
you skipped that slide.
What I was going to suggest, just following up on what Kevin had just said, is, so let's do these low-hanging fruit, right? These definitions we're trying to talk about. And let's just agree, let's be nice to each other, right? Code of conduct, and let's just start putting our ideas out there on the mailing list, and then go from there, right? And come to some consensus. I'd rather have us have something, and then we can talk about what we'd like to improve, or what we think is missing or whatever, rather than have nothing.
Funding the unpleasant work. Okay. Okay. So I think what was on that slide? I didn't even pay attention. Oh yeah. So this is not world domination. I just happen to have this template lying around. And I took this picture. This is I'm very proud of my fire picture. So, is there anything else we need to talk about before we end?
Pub.
I mean, we're
Which
at.
pub are we going to?
Oh yeah, the pub. So, do we want to
Mark's local. He could recommend a good one.
go somewhere after this? I have no dinner plans.
Dinner's harder than pub.
Yeah, dinner's harder than pub.
So what's the pub?
So what's the pub?
Well, like Thompson's Pub is just really close, and it's kind of quiet. It's a good one, but I don't know this number of people. We're probably going to fill it to capacity. So
This is a lot of people for most places.
I don't know about Malones, because that has been quite busy every time I've been in there.
That's got an upstairs. I suspect there's more room in there than you think.
Either way, people can come and go. I mean, we don't all have to go there right now, just later tonight or
Right.
whatever.
Another place to bump into someone.
Yeah.
Well, what did we decide? Malone's? Someone tell me where Malone's is. I'll look it up on
It's the
Google.
corner of Morrison and starts with a T. It's a weird word. Trappa something.
When you go out from the venue, just turn right.
It's kitty corner from the Leonardo Royal.
Go at the door, turn right, look on your left, it's there.
Okay.
You'll walk down a bit and it'll be up here on your left.
And what was the name again? I'm sorry, I said it and I don't even remember.
Malone's.
Malone's.
Actually, Malone's is on the right.
Sorry, yeah, I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah. It's roughly 2 blocks to the right
Okay.
when you go out the door.
Okay, so some of us will be hanging out there in a little while.
And we can hang out here until we get kicked
Yeah,
out.
we
and
can
just
hang out
know
here
if
until we get kicked out.
more
So,
just smaller conversations we want to have.
so well, should we talk about, are there any action items? I'll tell you what I plan to do after the meeting. So the next survey I do, because I kind of do surveys, is going to be a test definition survey. And like I said, it'll probably be more along the lines of just give me a reference to one of your test definitions so I can look at it.
Actually, while you were gone, we decided that the results aggregation was, or the output format and the pass-fail criteria was more valuable, low-hanging fruit than the test definition criteria. So in terms
you know what?
of
You know what I
first
think
first.
about that? I think that is an awesome decision to have made in my absence,
Yeah.
and I congratulate you on whoever's going to take over that.
So, are there any Debian maintainers, Debian developers in the room?
Yes.
Okay, because I need to get sponsored or whatever. I know there's the mentors thing, but I do need to get sponsored. So.
No, I mean, in Fuego, we've done a lot of work on the unified output thing. So I'm joking aside, I'm happy to help with that. But do we want to do the same type of thing where we do a survey of people's
think so,
current
yeah.
outputs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Instead of survey, why do we have a table where, somebody starts commenting and then we can add things that are missing?
You want like an eLinux wiki table where people can fill in the columns? Or what, is that type of table you're talking about? Or
Well, yeah.
okay.
I don't know, because survey is kind of hard to aggregate the data.
Well, yeah, and the existing survey, right? It's like, I don't know if I'll ever go back and make it into a table. It'd be nice as a table, but that's.
If we have a table where, I don't know, I can put, what I have there, other people can go and put, hey, this is totally not run and it's missing this. But at the end, it's just one table that we agree on.
That would be, and drive that discussion through the mailing list so that.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe actually just post to the mail, like somebody posts the first, like their thing to the mailing list and we can all bike share it there and come up with grand unified thing.
So as far as Debian packaging for PDU daemon, what I'll do is clear it with my internal process first. But
I actually want to talk to you about that because
Yeah.
I redid most of that packaging.
okay, but yeah, because I'm
Let's
I'm
talk
brand new
afterwards.
to it, so I need some kind, gentle review. So yeah. Or somebody else can do it. That's fine.
Okay, before we break, any other like burning issues that we didn't bring up? I kind of hesitate to ask because it is after 5, but. And again, let me go back to the first slide I have, which is I apologize that we could not cover in detail everything we wanted to cover, but hopefully we've had at least the beginning of a conversation on a lot of really important topics. I guess with that said, thank you all for coming.